All right. We've got the recording going. Everybody's muted. I've unmuted myself. Kim, you ought to unmute yourself.
There we go.
We'll get the chat line going. Do you guys see the chat open?
Yep, I have it open.
Okay. So if you have a question, please send it in on the chat line, and we will capture it. We are very interested, whether it's in tonight's topic or not, in hearing what challenges your particular roundtable is facing. If you can, enter that on the chat line. And whenever you do, let us know what roundtable you're associated with. That's very helpful for us. I do have one poll question tonight that I will post, and I guess I can't for some reason. It was working earlier. I am technically incapable, as you are quickly finding out. All right, tonight's guest is Kim or Kimbrel Pace. I'm sorry, Kim or Kimball Brace.
Yep.
He's a member of the Bull Run CWRT Roundtable. He heads up their technology committee and he's on their executive committee. Currently, he's coordinating their new webinar functions to deal with the COVID virus. His roundtable hosted the very first Roundtable Congress, which he attended. In addition to his involvement with roundtables, Kim is the founder and president of Election Data Services, Inc., which is a political consulting firm specializing in redistricting, reapportionment, the census, and various election administration issues, which leads me to believe he's going to be very busy in the next year or two. He founded the company in 1977. Importantly and pertinent to tonight's discussion also is the fact that he is the chairman of the Prince William County's Historical Commission. And he has been the chairman of that commission for the last 5 years. Yep. Kim, can you kind of level set us and give us a bit of background about the Bull Run CWRT Roundtable, where it's a little bit of its history and where it stood as of the COVID virus?
Sure. All right. We have about 300 members. It's about 290 or so. There's a bunch of family members, and so it kind of collapses down to about 190 separate email addresses that we send out information to. We get at our meetings, which we have every second Tuesday of the month, we get about anywhere from 70 to 80 people attending our meetings. It's in a local library, Centerville Library. We usually start at 7 o'clock, and the library woman comes on at 8:30 and says, everybody's got to go home, so, you know, close everything up, or call your parents to get your, to come get you, or whatever the case may be. It gives a good clue to our speakers that, hey, you got to close down now, so that's not bad. We end up, let's see, what else on the roundtable? That's basically the roundtable. We're pretty active, mostly men. We have about 15 females. We only have about a handful of minority members of our group. Some of them are reenactors, but we're always looking for more diversity on that front. We do a thing, scholarship for younger kids, usually high school going to college. So we just awarded a $2,000 scholarship to one high school student that wrote a paper for us on the importance of some aspect of the Civil War. And we awarded that to him so he could go off to college on a scholarship from the roundtable. That gets us a little bit more attention in the younger crowd. So we're seeking more attempt at that front to get younger people in the group also in that regard. But we are all are mostly an awful lot of old gray men on that side. So I've fit in well in that regard.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to ask, what sort of activities did your roundtable engage in before the virus?
Before the virus, we've actually had a bunch of activities. We usually have at least 1 to 2 trips, tours in the local area a month. That's usually in the summertime, but even in the wintertime, we usually try to get a tour or 2 in winter months. We have the advantage in being in Northern Virginia that we have a lot of stuff here. And as a result, we try to make use of that. So I ended up conducting a insider's tour of the National Archives and the Library of Congress in several instances to give people the capability of seeing how you could do research in both of those institutions. And we ended up having, we limited it to 20, 25 people, I think. And we had so many requests, we had to run it twice. We spent the entire day down at the Library of Congress and going through both the manuscript division to see things like Lincoln's signature for letter resignation from August of '64, where he had the cabinet sign it and sealed it. We were able to see that actual document. We saw a bunch of really neat documents. We saw the 191 orders that were found in the field up in Maryland from Lee. So we had the chance of making use of the advantage of being where we are to be able to see and look at a bunch of different history items. Most of all of them related to Civil War from our standpoint. When we went up to College Park Archives Division, we got some heavy tours in terms of the photography that they have up there, as well as all the mapping that they have up there. So it gave all of our people a clue of what they could end up seeing and go up and do their own research and kinds of things that they could find.
Now, has the COVID virus affected that particular function?
Unfortunately, it has. We have shut down and not done any tours since March. We haven't had tours out to battlefields or anything like that. One of the things that we're toying with is the potential, since we have had pretty good luck on doing the webinars like Zoom here, we've been toying with the idea of maybe doing some video conferencing and out on the field kind of sessions. One of our people have already gone out and done little 5-minute clips out on Manassas battlefield with different people and reenactors to help talk the story of what took place at Stonebridge or that sort of thing. So we're trying to get a little bit more into the tour kind of things, even though everybody is home in their basement.
Do you think you can come up with a live virtual tour with 1 or 2 people on a battlefield?
I think that's possible. We've seen some of that already, and so the question is just how good of a connection we can get, and what's possible. So yeah, it's something that we're going to be experimenting with.
That is very interesting, and if you could keep us up to date on Team CWRT, uh, as you experiment and make discoveries. I
Sure,
think we would
absolutely.
all find that very interesting.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
I think you mentioned meetings. You said that they were in a community library. Are you still able to have your in-person meetings?
No, the community library is a government property entity, and so it has been shut down. It'll be shut down probably at least through August, we think. At the very least is what we're told, and we'll have to see how much longer. That's part of the reason why we've ended up going and experimenting with webinars. And we first conducted it with WebEx. I have WebEx for my company, and so we tried that for a session. And everybody was talking about Zoom, and I was seeing what you guys and Mike had been doing with Zoom wise, and so we ended up finding that Zoom is about 1/10 the price of WebEx and actually gives us better connectivity. So we've now switched over, both my company as well as we voted last night from the roundtable standpoint to go to Zoom. And so we've been now, tomorrow night will be our third meeting with a speaker that we'll put out on Zoom. We end up connecting it to Facebook, our page on Facebook, so people can come in through Facebook. That way they don't have to download the Zoom product if they're concerned about that. We've had some of that. We are also putting it up on our YouTube page that we've been creating so that we can not only have a place where our previous speakers can be put onto, but we'll be able to link live to our YouTube page too.
What other functions does your roundtable regularly engage in?
Well, we end up, we do a lot with publications. We have put out several books. One, let's see, book done by one of our members is a great big history of, well, if we can see the.
Yeah, we're seeing your balloons.
Yeah, I know. It's an 800-page book on the history of Civil War in Fairfax County, which one of our members ended up doing, and we helped fund it and help with the publication of it. So we now sell that. We also did a publication on our 25th anniversary, which ran about 100 pages of different things about what has happened with the organization. So that came out. We're in the process of doing a third book now with one of our other members who is trying to visit all generals from the Civil War at their grave sites to see them and do a little history of each of the generals. So we're going to be publishing her book that has that kind of information. She's a regular in our newsletter that we also do. We have a monthly newsletter that we email it out to everybody. We still have probably about 10 people that we put them in the mail to. But that lets them see not only some history articles, but also some current event kind of articles.
So has COVID affected the quality or length of your newsletter or other publications?
No, not at all. That's been pretty good, and we're up at 16 to 20 pages each month. We have a double month in June and July, but usually it's we've got plenty of material on that side to keep going and publish information. We have a preservation committee that's headed up by Blake Myers, who does an excellent job in keeping track of what there is, any kind of problems that happens in terms of going on in locally, different circumstances. So we have an instance right now in Manassas area of a house called the Connor House that was actually Johnson's headquarters during First Manassas, was a Civil War hospital. during first and second battle. And the city of Manassas Park has sold some rights to it and the property to a developer, and there's an issue of whether or not he'll keep the structure or tear it down. And so we're starting to see what can be done in terms of trying to keep it or move it to another location. So that's the Connor House, and that's a hot topic right now. The other issue that we're heavily involved with is what is called Route 28, which comes across Blackburn's Ford. And the county government is seeking to expand Route 28 because we get terrible traffic of people going from Manassas up to Fairfax County. And so one of the things that are being talked about is to do a bypass around Blackburn's Ford. And so we're trying to make sure that the site of Blackburn's Ford, as well as where the crossing of the Confederate Railroad came across, is protected during that process.
Yeah, now Blackburn's Ford is, I think, underappreciated. It was the first time in the war that James Longstreet directed troops in combat, as well as the first time in the war that the 2nd Wisconsin came under fire and incurred its first fatality.
Yep.
I want to come back to that, but first we've had a couple of questions on the chat line. DK45E7 is asking at some point if people could identify what roundtables are present in this chat. So you could respond on the chat line to that question. And Carol is wondering if you could describe a little bit your position within your roundtable.
Well, that's a good question. I have so many other activities that I try to restrict my efforts within the roundtable, but usually that's unsuccessful. They have conned me into heading up the technology session, and so I'm running the webinars now that we're having. I do maps for the roundtable since I am heavily into GIS, so we know where all of our members live. We are actually, I geocoded them so that I knew what local supervisory district each member lives in. That will probably help us in our efforts in terms of the Connor House. It'll also help in another issue that has come up because of the monument issue and all of that. Fairfax County, where about 50% of our members live, Fairfax County has ended up asked the Historic Commission up in Fairfax County to compile a list of all the Civil War sites and street names that are in the county and monuments. We think it's probably ultimately an attempt to eliminate those. And so one of the things that we were discussing last night in our executive committee meeting was the positions that we might take. And I think we're going to try to structure it so that our position is for historical markers that they need to be kept there. Monuments, I think we're going to stay away from, given the fights that are going on that side. But for historical markers to provide context and all of that, it's something that we think should be preserved. And it's our way of kind of bifurcating ourselves a little bit from the controversy that's going on. One of the things we did in keeping away from that controversy was actually several years ago, where we ended up, we had the familiar stars and bars on our logo. Well, a couple of years ago, we could see the handwriting on the wall, and we eliminated the stars and bars from our logo. Instead, we have the first Congress's Confederate flag. That's a little bit, people don't really know it. It's not as apparent as the stars and bars. And so we've been able to kind of change and not bring too much of it of attention to that controversy in that regard. So it's some of the things that we've tried to do. As I said before, we're kind of in the middle of where everything is going on with the media and the president and all that in our backyard. So we're very cognizant of what is happening, and we're trying to stay a little bit away from the fray, but still have an influence and try to make sure that at least something like historical markers stay put and stay there. As part of my role with the Prince William County Historical Commission, we're in charge of creating those historical markers. And so we're very much, and I'm very much cognizant of that. I'd rather make sure that if they're gonna, some developer is gonna come along and bulldoze down an area and put up a parking lot, that nobody's gonna know what happened at that location unless there's a historical marker. We just did that. An old airport here in Manassas had been bulldozed, and the developer put a shopping center on it. And people now, 15 years later, didn't even know that there was an airport there. And so we made a historic marker about the Woodbridge Airport and put that up, let's see, 2 months ago, I think. So it's trying to preserve history is where we are. And that's partly of our preservation committee that is heavily involved in that realm of things and trying to keep our members cognizant of what's taking place besides just the fiascos that are going on the front page all the time.
One question about your roundtable. Do you know whether or not it is a 501c3 organization?
Yes, it is a 501c3. Yep.
And yet you said a few years ago, if I understood, that you did a little bit of effective lobbying.
Well, we've ended up continuing to try to play a role to a certain degree. We've ended up looking at where there are circumstances where we can have an influence. Not only am I on the Prince William County's Historic Commission, but one of our other members of the roundtable is now on the Fairfax County Historical Commission. So we're making sure that we're cognizant within the political community that there is in this area, and we can try to have at least some sway internally on some things in that regard.
Do you worry about jeopardizing your 501c3 status, which, as I understand it, prohibits you from political lobbying?
We're not looking at, we don't think we're doing political lobbying. We're advocating for historical markers and that sort of thing, which is part of what the Historical Commission is doing anyway. So we're trying to make sure we don't jeopardize that circumstance and the roundtable.
So it sounds like your focus in that, first of all, you got ahead of the memorials and flag issue by changing your logo.
Right.
And second of all, your focus is really on actual historical sites and actual historical information and markers and the like. Right.
And by doing publications and highlighting at our meetings, all of that kind of stuff, and our preservation committee, we think that we're providing a good service to not only our members, but also to people outside. I make sure in my historical commission that our preservation report that's done, I send that out to all of the 16 members of the Historic Commission in Prince William County, because it has some good information that could affect them in their aspects also.
Now, when you talk about your preservation report, which preservation report are you referring to?
It is we have a preservation committee, and Blake Myers heads that up, and every month he does a report, anywhere from 4 to 12 pages of information on hot topics of what's going on. One of the things that we also do in trying to help the kids involved is there is a readout in GMU's university area right next to their parking lot at the corner of 123 and Ox Road. And so we're involved in doing regular tours of that for the students there at George Mason University. And we're getting some of them to be involved in preservation efforts on that side. So again, trying to get the youth interested in some of the history. Most of them didn't realize that there was a significant encampment right there on their campus.
So asking you to switch hats briefly and put on your chairman of the Prince William County's Historical Commission hat, would you have advice for roundtables who would like to connect with a local historical commission like yours has connected? You've talked about having a preservation committee that puts out monthly reports that is distributed to local historical commissions.
Anything that you might be able to do to provide historical background, you got to remember that where we're located, we're in that unique position of history being all around us, certainly from Civil War times. If you're sitting out in St. Louis or other places, you don't have as much advantage on that side. But certainly touching base and seeing if there is a historical commission connected with your county government certainly is a worthwhile endeavor to see what they might be undertaking. A bunch of them do undertake historical marker creations and that sort of stuff. So any help that could be done, certainly if there's any kind of stuff like in St. Louis with the old forts and that sort of stuff, if there's not markers there already, proposing those kind of things to a historical commission is something that would be worthwhile.
And then on this monuments and flag issue, are you perceiving it either as kind of an internal threat or an external threat to the sustainability of your roundtable? Or do you feel like you've gotten enough in front of it that it's an issue you don't have to worry so much about?
I would never say I wouldn't have to worry about it. You need to be cognizant of what's going on. And so we try to stay very much in the know of what's taking place and where the structures are. Richmond is only an hour and a half away from us, and all the Monument Avenue issues that's going on down there and the taking down of the statues and the monuments down there. We're very much cognizant of that because some of our members they don't live down in Richmond, but they at least travel through that conceivably. We do have one of our members that's our speaker tomorrow night. He's a member of our roundtable, but he lives down in Williamsburg, Virginia. And so he's coming through Richmond all the time. So being cognizant of what's going on around, not just in our local community, but elsewhere in our instance, in our state, is something that we're always trying to do. Part of it is some of my background. I used to be a journalist. I used to cover politics. And so I'm always interested in what's going on. It's that journalism background of me. And so I try to provide those kind of pieces of information to our historical commission. Part of my chairman's report each month is showing some of the news clippings that I might see that previous month that have relevant information, even if it's in Alabama or any place else that has some relevance to history. We're into at the Historic Commission graveyard preservation. And so that's one of the aspects that we do there. We don't do as much of that in the roundtable standpoint but that's certainly one avenue of connecting history together in that regard.
All right. Are there any questions for Kim at this time? And if I didn't explain earlier, if you're unfamiliar with the Zoom chat line, you have two options to send either a private message or to send a message to everyone. If you do send a message, please send it to everyone.
I'd be happy to answer anybody's questions or go back and forth with everybody.
Okay, and Mike, I think earlier you said you activated the poll, you launched the poll. If people could take a couple of minutes to look at the poll and answer the poll, that would give us some useful information.
They've done that.
Okay, then you must have the responses because I'm not seeing them.
And I showed them to everyone, actually.
For some reason, I'm not seeing those. Okay.
Well, there it is.
There it is. Yep.
I'm still not seeing it. All right. So
60% of people are concerned about aging out. It is a legitimate issue in our community. Certainly something that we try to focus on at Bull Run Roundtable by trying to get some of the kids involved on those various things that I mentioned.
okay. Well, let me share
DK's
my-
got a great question.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns roundtables could be tagged as racist by those tearing down monuments? You'll always have that potential. So that's why, at least in our instance, we try to talk about history to stay away from the racist label on that side. Doing away with the stars and bars, that sort of thing. Really talking about history is where we want to focus on and try to make sure that we try to stay away from the racist label. It is a problem, certainly, in anybody that is involved with the Civil War. And it is something that we're seeing more and more of, but that's why we try to couch things from a history standpoint as opposed to a rebel versus union or that sort of thing. And certainly not talk about monuments and keeping them up or whatever. Let somebody else argue those kind of issues.
Any other questions or thoughts? All right. So
I'd ask every one of you guys, have you seen tags of racism in terms of your groups at all yet? No, good. All right. Thankfully, we'll stay that way.
yeah, I have to say, personally, my concern is that a roundtable somewhere will say or do something that might have a reputational effect on all roundtables.
Right. Well,
Luckily, that doesn't seem to have happened yet.
that's why we need to get more people involved with the Civil War Roundtable Congress, guys, on that front.
That was not pre-programmed. All right, to kind of wrap up a little bit. Yep. So sharing my screen here. People who were at the first summit will recall this. We are encouraging people to join the team at Team CWRT on the Facebook page. This is where we hope to have more in-depth, long-term discussions about some of the issues that we have raised tonight. And let's see here. For contact information, if you have subsequent questions or issues, please email the team at summit@cwrtcongress.org. And if you have, if you could copy Rich Jankowski and myself on those emails, we would appreciate it as a matter of convenience. Rich Jankowski is our lead, is the lead of Team CWRT, and can work with anybody more directly on a one-to-one basis regarding any issues that you wish to discuss with the Congress.